Hello and welcome to another Alphi educational video in our series of such things with Elliot Omanson and
Nathaniel Vossman.
Today we're going to get into something that might be a little boring on the surface, but it's very important, very crucial,
yes.
and always procrastinated on.
Yes.
That'd be estate planning. What actually happens to your money and how far down that rabbit hole do you really need to go? Right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it oftentimes gets procrastinated just because, you know, when you're living on Earth, not many people are thinking about dying, and this is pretty important.
Nor do you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's easy just to put off. And then, you know, of course, when you die, it's like less important to you at that point, but it's very important to everyone else in your life. Save them a lot of hassle, time, money.
Yeah.
So.
Most of my friends wrote their first will at 18.
Wow.
I wrote mine at 30.
Yeah,
now, why would that have been the case?
That's a good question.
Because we were deploying into combat.
Yeah.
And so that's actually something that I'm really grateful for. The military, every time you deploy into combat, you re-update it all. And you do powers of attorney for financial, for health directives. You do your will. All that kind of stuff, right? And one of the beautiful things about that is it breaks the hang-ups you have towards doing it, right? It's like once you've done it for the third time, it's like, yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's actually, I mean, it makes complete sense. I never really thought about that, but yeah, if you're deploying, it's a good time to do it.
yeah, you kind of need to.
Yeah.
But most people rarely have an event like that in their life that forces them to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's also one of the reasons why we've incorporated this into our entire process. So just like with individual tax returns, we actually do all of our clients' estate planning work as well. And we're going to get into some of the reasons why as we go through this. So, but let's start off with, what do you think the first question should be?
I mean, I think we always start kind of high level. So we kind of just go kind of high level, like what's estate planning, and also high level, like what happens to your money after you die.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start there?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that's a great one, and I like your first point, right? So I firmly believe that most people don't really need a trust. And we're going to get into why you need a trust later on here. But why do I say most people don't need a trust? It's just because most assets that you have can be solved with a beneficiary designation, a transfer on death, or a payable on death.
Yeah.
Okay. So your car titles, if you had transfer on death, when you pass, that transfers to whoever you put on the car title. Okay. If you have bank accounts and you have payable on death, that just transfers to whoever's on the payable on death, which is on your bank account, right? Now, I've set up a ridiculous number of bank accounts. They've never asked me to fill that out. So this is the same with when you go title a car. I don't recall ever being instigated by the other party to fill any of this stuff
you have
out.
to go like out of your way, because I've certainly never set up a bank account and seen any option to do payable on death.
Yeah. Now, while we're on the topic of bank accounts really quick, just as a minor detail, some people have joint bank accounts that say and some people have joint bank accounts that say or. And if you're married and you trust each other, it should absolutely be or and not and. If one of you passes and it says and, you're screwed.
So what happens then?
Well, then you have to have that account go through probate and stuff.
Oh.
Because the other party that has to be there because it says and is not around. But if it's or, either of you
can be an owner. Whereas if it says and it's you guys are one joint owner, kind of.
Correct.
Wow.
So there's little tiny things like that can
is
create problems for you. All right.
Hmm.
And then the other thing to note while we're talking about this is nothing trumps the beneficiary designation, the transfer on death, or payable on death. And we'll get into some of the problems that can create for people. And then assets that are solely in your name may go through probate. Now, while we're on that topic, most states have what's called a small estate affidavit, where if your estate's assets are below a certain amount, you're not required to go through probate.
Oh, really?
Correct.
And so if they're below a certain amount and they're in your name only,
correct.
Is that, let's say you don't have a will, would it go through court then, or?
No, as long as the value. So like in Kansas or Missouri, I think it's $40,000.
So real small.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's small estate affidavits can sometimes allow you to avoid probate. But if you have no plan, usually the state intestacy. Did I say that correctly?
I think so.
I didn't go to college.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
All right. Intestacy law decides what happens. So what's intestacy law?
That's, I would assume pertaining to anything when people are dying without a will in place. So I assume it goes straight to court.
Yeah, it goes to court and they decide. Generally, it's immediate spouse, followed by blood relatives, like your children, stuff like that. But the problem with it is that, anytime you go through probate, you're talking about dragging time out, increased costs, increased conflict. So it's just something that you really want to avoid.
Yeah. Whereas if everything was set up properly, it just skips that entirely. All the assets go straight to the people who are entitled to it, and that's it.
Easy peasy.
Yeah. So big difference.
Yeah. And so the things that are quickest always are those beneficiary designations, transfers on death and payable on death.
So what happens if you have a plan, or maybe you don't have a plan, and then you're incapacitated, and you're no longer able to make decisions for yourself?
Well, and this gets really nasty. And so let's kind of get into that a little bit, right? Like with anything, you can, for the most part, get away with the gray, right? And as an example of that is like I had a client whose family member had good days and bad days. Technically, it's over with. You should not be having them sign anything.
Yeah.
Because how are you going to bring a medical team in?
Yeah,
to certify that that's the good day that you had them sign that?
Yeah.
Right? So why do I say that for the most part you can get away with in the gray? Because if your family's if nothing's going to get contested, right? And you determine somebody is starting to suffer from dementia or Alzheimer's and they're having good days and bad days, right? You can probably have them sign some stuff at that point in time when they're lucid and nobody contests it. It's not a problem. But you really don't want to be waiting until then.
Yeah, preferably not, I would assume.
Yeah. And it just doesn't make sense to wait till then anyways.
Yeah.
But that's when courts get involved. If you don't have documents written and signed stating who the executor of the state is or who the trustee of the trust is, there's no one. I mean, it's, then the court has to determine who's going to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll bring a third party in order to do that. And it's like, why do you want to go through all those headaches, right? So what you should have is you should have a number of documents. You should have a financial power of attorney. You should have a healthcare power of attorney. You should have a living will. You should have a successor trustee. You may also want to have, I'm totally blanking on what it's called, a medical directive.
Oh, yes.
Right. So like if you don't want to be resuscitated under certain circumstances than you do in others, yeah, you probably want to have that written out.
So talking about the trust, like setting up a trust, to put in place. So can you kind of explain what kind of trust we're talking about and how that differs compared to like a trust that we were talking about last week? Because last week the objective when we were talking was reducing capital gains. But in this case, we're talking about kind of transferring of assets after death.
Yes. Very important. So the first thing you got to know about trusts is all a trust is a contract. Contract law and trust law is essentially almost the same thing. Within the trust world, I don't even know that you could name the number of different types of trusts there are.
Yeah.
Every week, some Tom, Dick, or Harry is like creating a new name for a trust. And in reality, trusts have what are called provisions, and provisions you can just think of as like best practices, right? They're aspects of contracts that have been developed over time, that have been proven out in the courts, basically. And so the trust that we're talking about today is the most common and basic of all trusts. And it's called a living trust. It is a revocable living trust. So you have two types of, at the top of this tree.
Family tree of trust.
Yes. You have lots of different branches with lots of different leaves. But at the top of it, before it splits off, or at the bottom of it, before it sprouts out, any which way you want to look at it, you basically have revocable or irrevocable. The key differentiator, to make it easy for people, is a revocable living trust uses your Social Security number. Okay? And technically, when people say they've got stuff in their trust, there's nothing in that trust. At death, your assets move to the trust. And then the trust distributes them according to the terms of the trust. Okay? But all those assets are still in your estate, so to speak. When it comes to a irrevocable trust, okay, and then I'm not going to go into the weeds on this, but then you have grantor and non-grantor irrevocable trusts. But for the most part, an irrevocable trust has its own EIN number. It is its own entity, okay? When your assets are held in an irrevocable trust, they've been removed from your estate. All right. And if you're very wealthy, there's numerous advantages to that. Very few people really need, use, or operate out of that.
Yeah.
So the thing that you really got to know, though, is that with a revocable living trust, there's no real tax advantages. There's no real benefit while you're alive. It's purely, I guess there's two purposes, but for the most part, the majority of purpose is to help avoid probate and transfer assets at death. The only real, I'm sure I would love for people more knowledgeable on this topic to comment on this video and tell me I'm wrong, because I'd love to learn more. In the time that I've been doing this, the only real reason I can see somebody to have a living trust is if they want to control the distribution of assets after they pass, right? So maybe their kids are under the age of 18, or maybe one of their kids is a total screw up, right? Like I was, and you don't want them to get a chunk of money while they're a total screw up, right? And so you could have your assets flow to the trust at passing, and then you could start to put stipulations or requirements on how that money gets distributed to someone.
So, like, for example, the accounts otherwise would avoid probate altogether, like an IRA. You could put it into a trust and then have it designated to...
Well, now that gets really complicated, because an IRA cannot be owned by an entity.
What about the case of a revocable?
There's what's called so even on a revocable living trust, when remember, you're not moving any assets to it until you pass.
Yeah.
At passing, it converts to an irrevocable trust. Okay. Now, you will hear of people having an IRA go into a trust. I think they're called pass-through trusts. Okay. And so essentially it gives the trust some control over the IRA while still assigning that IRA to an individual. Okay. No, IRAs can only be owned by one person, never by more than one, and never by an entity, only ever an individual. All right. And so if people try to make their trust a beneficiary on an IRA and the trust is set up incorrectly, then it'll trigger a distribution of those assets out of that IRA into the trust. You'll eat a giant tax bill.
All at once?
All at once.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. So you have to make sure, I'm pretty sure it's called a flow through, a pass through, sometimes called a look through. It's the problem with these things is there's like
a bunch of names for the same thing.
Names for the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so, yeah. And I, you know, I have a very good friend of mine who did it, you know, his family did it all correctly. And so he technically has an IRA, an inherited IRA, that he inherited before the Secure Act. So there's no 10-year requirement on it. And it's technically held by a trust, but it's a pass-through.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Hope I didn't go too into the weeds.
No,
there.
I think it's good. I think it's like things that people don't even consider.
Yeah.
So kind of on the same topic of IRAs and anything else that has a beneficiary, you know, one big issue I think we've talked about before is forgetting to update those things.
Oh my goodness.
Because that can make a massive impact. You know, you got an IRA, you've been putting your life savings into it, or 401k or anything, and you know, you might have an X on there or something.
Yeah. Let's create a scenario, right? So you've built up an IRA, or maybe it's not even an IRA yet, and it's a 401k, and you're married, your ex is your beneficiary, you get divorced, you don't update anything, right? Your ex got some other assets instead of your retirement account, right? Years down the road, you made a woman. You guys go to an estate planning attorney or something, and you create a trust, and you assign the 401k. Inside the trust, you talk about the 401k flowing to the trust, but maybe you don't, or maybe you don't update it, or maybe you update that one, but you forget to update one from a previous employer.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. And so this is the thing that people have to understand is nothing trumps a beneficiary designation or a transfer on death or payable on death. So you could have intended inside the trust for this account to go to your current spouse or to your kids, but you forget about some account that's out there from the past that still got your ex on it. Your ex is in for a nice little surprise.
Good for him or her. For
That's
real.
right.
Dang.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think, you know, there's a lot that goes into the estate planning.
Well, yeah, and there's one other thing I wanted to point out too, right? And we talk about this in a lot of different things. People love to do something and forget about it.
Yes.
Right? We build a financial plan. We've done it. We're going to get 10 grand a month of income to supplement Social Security, and we don't think about it again. Well, there's literally an infinite number of things that can change.
Yeah.
I'm not a mathematician, so infinite might be a slight exaggeration.
No, infinite sounds about right. Yeah.
But I think it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with estate planning. People, if you can stop procrastinating and go do it, then that thing goes into a drawer, right? And I don't know if I've said this in other videos, but the thing that just absolutely stuns me is that no estate planning firm that I've ever heard of, and there's not a soul I've ever met, has ever had that estate planning firm reach out back to them. Like, if I ever wanted to be, poor, I would open up my own estate planning law firm. But what I would do is I would have people set to either A, every time a law changed, bring them back in. And if that was too complicated for me to build into my system, I would just have it done like at least every 5 years. And I would literally just sell people on, we're going to build this for you today. We're going to put into our calendar 5 years from now for you to get a reminder. And we're going to bring you back in. We're going to review. In fact, we won't even bring you back in. We're just going to pull up all your documents and we're going to review it. And we're going to shoot you an email. And if it needs to be updated, we're going to tell you what needs to be updated, how much that's going to cost you, and ask you to come back in for a review. And then we might ask you some questions so you could answer those questions. And based off the laws that have changed, if any, and the questions that you answered, we'll then tell you, let you know what needs to be changed in your trust and what the cost is. It'd be a great source of reoccurring revenue for these people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've never met a single soul that's ever had their estate planning attorney ever reach back out to them after having done it.
And it seems pretty important, and, they can make decent money doing it.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the hardest form of revenue is a new client.
Yeah.
The easiest form of revenue is a past client.
Yeah.
Like, you got the relationship already.
Yeah.
You've already done work for them, right? Like, I just literally don't get it. And again, that's why we just took it over.
Yeah. So would you say that that's typically one of the biggest issues outside just procrastinating in the first place?
Oh, the number one issue is people not doing it, clearly. Not to sound like Yogi Berra.
Yeah.
Right? But, yeah, the number one problem is not doing it. The number two problem is not updating. Right.
Yeah. And so, like, for yourself, like, how would you recommend people who have already put a plan in place to stay on top of keeping it updated, so that way, if something does happen, everything's ready?
Yeah. So, like I said, if you're not gonna work with somebody that stays up to date on all the changes that occur, and so, by the way, since 2017, there's been 4 laws passed that could possibly impact your trust. That's 4 different events where you should have had whoever built your trust documents review your trust documents since 2017. So we're running one every 2 years, basically.
Yeah.
Right? Now, which is funny because the rule of thumb is every 5 years, you should review all those documents.
So it's going to be probably out of date.
But there could be but at the rate we're going, that's possibly 2 changes that have outdated your trust.
Yeah.
Right?
Because, like, as soon as one of those changes comes, some parts of your whole estate plan are going to be outdated.
Correct. And so I would either, A, put into my calendar a reminder every 5 years. I mean, this is what I do with my dog's heart meds. Every month on the first of the month, I get an appointment reminder that I need to give my dogs their heart meds, right? Yeah. I mean, it's not hard to set an appointment for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years out. You'll forget about it. Who cares?
Yeah.
Your phone will remember.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Or find somebody like us that has the software to integrate your financial plan with your estate plan, and that software makes us aware of when changes need to be done and when your plan needs to be updated.
Yeah, because I know we've done a short video talking about the software we do use. So how does the cost of something like that compare to working with an attorney? Because, if you're working with an attorney, they're going to be charging you, I assume, a good amount of money versus the software.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that I find really interesting. One of the greatest scams ever perpetrated on people is that financial advisors are trying to sell them something, and CPAs and attorneys aren't.
Yeah, they're running their own business.
Just because they suck at it doesn't mean they're, like, compared to us, doesn't mean they're not doing it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so early on, before we had the ability before I'd brought on our first, estate planning attorney, I had a client who suffered from absentee seizures, so he couldn't drive. And he had me take him to his estate planning attorney over in Corporate Woods. We went for 3 meetings, and I was really glad I had been there. This client had no need for a trust, had no heirs, period, never married, okay, and the bulk of all assets in retirement accounts. What in the world could he ever need a trust for?
Yeah, no idea.
Right? But you're going to get charged somewhere between $3,500 and $7,500 for a trust versus $500 to $800 for a will. Right? And I watched this attorney try his damnedest to sell this guy a trust. And the only thing that stopped my client from paying that money for one was me sitting there.
Yeah.
Right? Now, what's funny is I doubt it's a lot more work.
Probably not.
And I'm only speaking to the basic living trust.
Yeah. Not some of the other trusts
These
we
are
discussed.
yeah. These are all templated forms.
Yeah.
They actually subscribe to a database of forms. They literally type your name and address and blah, 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 and hit enter.
Yes, just some data entry.
Yeah. They're literally just doing data entry on the particulars of you, your family, your spouse, your ex-spouse, your future ex-spouse, right? all that kind of stuff. And it populates everything. I mean, I'm not an estate manager. I don't know how much actual editing of paragraphs they would ever need to do.
But probably not worth the amount of money you're spending on it.
No. And I also found it stunning that, this poor guy had to meet with the client 3 times and then actually go type in a little bit of information and create the form document for the will so he could collect a $550 check. Well, I'd have been trying to sell a trust too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the incentive. Yeah, if that attorney's going to spend that much time meeting, he's going to want and really push for it. So yeah, it's a good point that you bring up because I do feel like financial advisors have a reputation just in society as salespeople. But you're right, like CPAs are just like
you don't think
doing God's work, grinding away during tax season, and attorneys are doing the same thing.
Boy, do they act like it, and boy, do they do a great job creating that image.
Yeah.
They got their pleated J.C. Penney Dockers that they've ironed the seam down the front. They've got their, polo off the rack at Walmart, and their personality is about as interesting as their clothes.
Yeah.
And you would never guess that they're trying to sell you something.
Yeah. They're just not very good at it.
Yeah. But it's like, how do you think they're in business?
Yeah. I mean, every business is trying to sell you something. There's no business that's like just there to help you out.
Altruistic.
Yeah. It's just
you know what I chose to do? Sacrifice my soul on 1,000 tax returns, in 3 months leading up to April 15th, just because I'm, my grandmother's Mother Teresa and I'm trying to follow in her shoes. Like,
Yeah. Because if someone's like operating business without a profit motive, what kind of service are you really getting?
Well, and I'll be honest with you. And so I'm going to counter my own point here. A lot of them, that's why you get the level of service you get. They really don't know how to monetize their business correctly. And I think a lot of it has to do with money mindset. And because of that, I mean, you get horrendous service. And a lot of it's the government's fault. Why in the world all tax returns are due on April 15th instead of breaking them up based on your last name throughout the course of the year, I don't know.
Yeah. It's a very good thought.
But 95% of our customer complaints have nothing to do with us. And it's always CPAs and attorneys that we have brought to the table to try and help our clients.
Yeah. And I do feel like, not to hit on anyone that we work with or our clients have worked with, but I feel like a lot of the bottlenecks we face are on hearing back from CPAs and attorneys. And part of it is that they're so swamped with so much work that they're doing. Yeah, I can see why there's complaints.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they're just wrong about things, which doesn't help.
Well, but I think the reason, sometimes they literally don't know.
Yeah.
But the majority of errors and mistakes they make are that they're forced into rushing through 1,000 tax returns. Yeah. I don't know what the estate planner's attorney's problem is because they don't have those issues. But I just know, but with the attorneys, it's funny. The problem, so there's 2 different sets of problems here. I know we're way off topic, but with the attorneys, you just can't get them to communicate appropriately. You'll email them and you don't hear from them for 2 weeks. It's like, how hard is it to like shoot an email back and be like,
at least acknowledge
hey, yeah, I got your email. I'm gonna get to this. I'm a little booked up, with golf, but I got one day the next 2 weeks here. I'm gonna actually do some work. I mean, I don't know what their problem is, and I'm being an a-hole, but But yeah, you can't get them to communicate. And yeah, there's a host of issues there. But anyways, I don't know why I'm talking about that. So, yeah, let's talk. I want to talk about some stuff that you don't necessarily have in here.
Yep.
There's an esoteric, I don't know if that's the right word, side of estate planning that I think is really important to discuss. All right. And maybe we kind of talked about what happens if estate plans go wrong because you have ex-spouses on things. Or, I tell a story all the time of a woman when she went to sell her home and she'd signed a contract on a retirement center. It turned out her house was owned by 6 people. She had done everything correctly 20 years earlier, but then the laws had changed. And so when her husband had died, his one half of the house, instead of going to her, went to their 3 kids. And then her son had died, I think before or after that. And his 1/3 of the one half went to his 3 kids. Mm-hmm. So you had 2 of her kids and 3 of her grandkids owning one half of the house, spread all over the country. You're trying to close. There's a buyer expecting the close to happen. She needs the money from the sale in order to put down on this, so she doesn't lose her deposit.
Yeah.
It's a total nightmare, right? So, yeah. So you got to make sure your beneficiary is updated, your accounts are aligned with the documents, titling is done correctly, things are updated as they need to be, right? But I'll tell you about something that I see a lot. And this isn't really due to the mechanics of estate planning, but I think it's even more important or equally important. I'll have clients come to me and they'll talk about splitting their money up, and they're going to give 10 or 20% to one kid and 80% to the other. And their reasoning is always a positive reason. I'll ask them what the purpose of that is. And they'll say, oh, well, my son is a high-powered attorney in New York. He makes millions a year. My daughter, she had a kid when she was 17, and she lives in a trailer park, and blah, 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 right? I get it. The problem is that money has 2 sides to it. And I always tell people my job is to explain the number side. Your job is to bring your emotion to the table, right? But let's talk through it, right? And so money has this side of emotion to it, and it's interpreted a lot of times as love. You see parents do this all the time, right? Parents spoil kids for a lot of different reasons. It's never to help the kid.
Yeah.
Right? We tell ourselves we're helping the kid. We're never helping the kid. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's to make up for what we didn't have when we were kids. Right? So then we give all this to our kids. Sometimes we have this one kid who's a total screw up, and we're constantly having to help that kid. Right? The problem is when you pass and you distribute assets, for one kid to get more than the other, if they know about it, is interpreted as you loved that kid more.
Yep. Yeah.
No matter how much that one kid knows he's more successful and he's fine and he didn't need it, there's always this thing in the back of their head that they got screwed, robbed.
Yeah. It builds like resentment.
It does. It absolutely builds resentment. And what happens even greater then is it's not resentment towards you. You're their parent. They love you. Who does the resentment get built towards?
Towards the person who got the money.
Correct. And now you just created a rift between your children, right? And that is the one thing I absolutely do not allow. When my kids have conflict with each other, we end that shit. Like that's one thing I don't tolerate in my kids' relationships.
Yeah, because you allow that to get out of hand real quick.
Yeah.
That goes for like relationships, friends, children, employees.
Yeah. Then I have other issues where I have a client, a number of clients who are on their second marriage. And they'll have kids with outside of that marriage. They may have kids with that marriage, right? And and it's going to sound super sexist. I don't mean for it to, but there is something that occurs quite frequently. And I don't think it's a sexism thing. I think it's due to the fact that the majority of time the woman outlives the man. Okay? And women are very empathetic. But who are they most empathetic to? Their own children.
Yeah.
Okay?
Understandably, yeah.
So when my grandfather passed, he was a millionaire. And he was on his second spouse. And not a dime of his money ended up going to his kids.
Really?
It was all passed on to his wife for her to use, and whatever was left over was supposed to be distributed among her kids and his kids.
Yeah.
But the money's hers. So all while she was alive, that money went to her children and her. To the point to where when she passed, there was nothing to be passed on to his kids.
That's tough.
I see that happen all the time.
So what could someone like that do, like someone who's married, to ensure that, after they pass, that the money isn't just spent in a way that, defeats the whole purpose of what he was like saving for, trying to leave a legacy for his own kids.
And he wanted to.
Yeah.
Right? So there's really only one solution that I've ever been able to identify. And that is you distribute the money to your kids at your passing. Right? Now, this takes some planning work because ultimately the person you care about the most is the one you're married to.
Yeah.
All right? If you don't, you probably shouldn't be married to him.
Fair enough, yeah.
Okay? And you don't want to have distributed money to your kids and then they run out of money and you're up in heaven, or in my case, you're in hell looking up, wishing you had left more of the money to your spouse.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
But if you do the planning right, you should be able to identify, what can I leave today? Right? Even if I had one guy, he was like, well, at my passing, the house gets paid off. And at her passing, the house gets split among everybody. And that's a great plan. Until a year or two down the road, she sells that house and moves, downsizes, and gives whatever's left over away to her children.
Yeah.
Right? Now, on the flip side of this, and this is more sexist towards men, I see another thing where it's usually the guy. While both parties are living, I think women speak more empathetically of all parties. I think after somebody passes, that shifts. And I'm sure I'm going to get in a lot of trouble by women for saying what I'm saying here. I'm just telling you, this is what I've seen.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the negative aspect of this for a man is I'll see men while they're alive, and they don't want to leave money to their wife's kids. They never have as high of an opinion of their stepkids. And I'm sure it's true vice versa.
I think deep down, that's just biology.
It's biologic, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of this is all biology. So this isn't,
I feel like this is straight up biology. It makes 100% sense.
Right? And so I have another client, his wife has kids. He doesn't want any of his money going to them. As far as he's concerned, it's his money. It goes to his kids.
Yeah.
Right? And that creates conflict in there. And so so one of the reasons people don't do estate planning is because in the back of the head, they know there's going to be some really hard conversations they're going to have.
Yeah. Money's a tough one, especially the ultimate decision with money.
It is. Right? And back to that client I was mentioning, I was talking about before this last example, there was one other part of that I wanted to get into. So 2 kids are hers, 2 kids are his, and they have one together. And what was it? There was something really just unique about that situation that I thought would be interesting to throw out here, and I think I just blanked on it. So, but you just the more like our lives become, fractured and put together with these different pieces, the more difficult it becomes, really to map it out. Oh, and so one of the things I tell clients all the time, what I told this other client was, don't try and have this conversation on your own. Okay? Come in, and I even told the other, both these examples. You come in, I will be the bad guy. Now, just so you know, I'm not doing this from a position of naivety. I know that by me being the bad guy, the minute you pass, what's going to happen to me as your financial advisor? I'm fired.
Yep.
Right? Because I appear to be taking your side versus the other person's. There's been plenty of times where I've taken the woman's side. There's been plenty of times where I take the man's side. I don't pick them. I pick them based on what I view personally as fair. And I'm not doing that based off my own religious beliefs or anything like that. One of the things I love about this job is I have hundreds of families that are all successful, all in different various stages, and all their actions all flowing to me. And so it's like you're like a human data miner, and you get to see what happens to people based on their decisions in regards to all these things. And you get to see what the best outcomes are, not just for the clients, but literally for their children, right? You see what creates conflict. You see what creates infighting. You see what separates families. And it's like, this is absolutely the best way to do it. And so the client had 2 kids from a wife, 2 kids from him, and a child between the 2 of them. I was like, here's what I would do if I were you. I would, at your passing, have money go to both of your living children. I would have at her passing money go to your kid that you have together and her 2 kids. Now, I wouldn't. So one of the problems we have in our society is we don't talk to our children about money.
True. Very true.
And people really need to cut that out. All right. I've never met a kid that had an accurate representation of how much money their parents had.
Yeah.
And what's hilarious to me is they all are wrong in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Do you think the majority of kids think their parents have more or less money than what they have?
I would assume probably less, right?
No.
More?
100% think their parents have more money than what they actually ever have. I have never met someone. And so this creates a secondary problem because there's no communication from the parents to the kids. And the kids were never involved in the retirement planning or the estate planning. The parents die. Half or less of the money that the kids expect to get is there.
Yeah.
And who do they think stole it all?
The others. Oh, you.
The evil, corrupt financial advisor. Somehow.
Even though that's not how any of this works.
No, it's not how any of it works.
There's no. Yeah.
I don't even know how I would do it if I could try.
Yeah, we'd have to find a way to do that.
We'd have to.
It's called. It's illegal.
Yeah, I mean it's illegal. There's numerous mechanisms to protect people, right?
No way.
Like we don't hold your assets. There's a custodian that does. The money can only move from the custodian to your parents' bank account.
Yeah.
Right. I recently have a client who's wanting to get divorced from their wife, and the wife decides at 70-something years old, she's going to try and figure out where all their money's gone and wanted 5 years of transaction statements because she's going to become a forensic accountant and comb through it all to figure out where her husband hid all the money. Wait, there's no money. You've been living off of it.
Yeah.
Right? So what I back to my point here is what I instructed this guy on. I would have your 3 kids come in that you have with your wife, and I would tell them, here's what I would like to do. At my passing, I would like to pass money on to my kids. I'd like to leave the bulk of everything to your mother to support her. At her passing, what was mine and your mom's money is going to be distributed to the 3 of you to take care of you. How many kids do you think are going to have a problem with that plan?
I would assume none.
Yeah. Very few.
And it's good that they're in the loop so they understand how this money's being split up.
And he loves his wife's kids. This is I mentioned another client. He doesn't want his wife's kids to get anything, right? This guy actually, he raised these other 2 kids as his own. He wants them to get something, but they're not his kids either.
Yeah.
Right. And so now what he could do is he could also, because there's limitless variations of this, he could pass on the chunks of money to his kids that he wants to leave them and distribute a small amount of money to the other 3 so they get something too at his passing, but then the bulk of their inheritance comes at the end of their mother's life.
Yeah.
Right? So there's lots of different ways to work it. I just always advise people, do not pay one kid more or less than another based on your perception of their needs, because they will not interpret it as such.
Yeah.
And even if they can mentally and intellectually recognize that they're better off, it will always still sit with them that you cared less about them.
Yeah. It's, as with anything, there's like things that people know to be factual, but then there's also the emotional side of things. So
yeah,
they
and we
completely
can recognize
understand.
the emotions wrong.
Yeah.
There's plenty of times I feel a certain way about things. I know I'm wrong.
Exactly.
I still feel it.
Yeah, 100%.
Because
That's how emotions are.
Yeah, because we're emotional and thinking creatures.
Yeah.
And you need to recognize both of those,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to estate planning.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's the biggest deal that you can make in your life.
Yep. Anything else you think we should talk about?
No, I think that just about covers
we
it.
end on how do we approach this with clients?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just go through the process real quick. The very first thing to do is map all your assets. Identify your probate exposure. Review beneficiaries. Review the titling, the transfers on death, the payables on death. And then you coordinate with the attorneys. Ensure the trust is funded. What do we mean by ensuring the trust is funded?
That the stuff you want in the trust is actually titled to the trust?
Titled to the trust, right? So if you have a non-qualified brokerage account, which will be an individual account or an account titled in your trust, if it's titled in your trust, you're good. If it's not, you can also have it be the primary beneficiary.
Yeah.
So at your passing, it goes over to the trust. And then you want to make sure that if things happen like you're incapacitated or die, there's, executors, co-executors, trustees, contingent trustees, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So just to end on this, I just want to drive one point home. You have all the dry, boring parts of estate planning. That's the technical, the functional part of it. But then you have the actual, that's easy. Then you have the difficult part of it. And that's the emotional part of it. And that's dealing with the complexities of family and children. And that I highly recommend you don't try to have those conversations alone.
Yeah.
There's just something really powerful about having a third party in the room who's not on either side, because I hate to break it to you, when you have kids from previous marriages, there's a side.
Yeah. Well, definitely.
There's absolutely a side. And having that disinterested third party to act as a mediator, especially one who sees this all the time and has done it over and over and over and can actually tell stories of situations where people did it certain ways and what the outcomes of those ways of doing it were, positive and negative. It really helps put things in perspective and helps people identify how they want assets to be distributed in a more, I think, an overall more positive way.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the biggest benefit of working with an advisor, whether it's estate planning or just retirement planning. It's taking out the emotional side.
Yeah.
And just looking at it more objectively.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest benefit.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that's everything for the estate planning work. So this is Elliot.
Nathaniel.
Go keep what you've earned, guys.
Mm-hmm.